everybody see my screen? Perfect. Let's move this to the side. Let's click the play button. All right. Welcome, everybody. This is one of my most favorite topics to discuss. It's mindset, it's attitude, it's perspective. This class was by Scott Greenberg. He shared a lot of his personal stories to tie it all in together. Because you didn't watch the video, I feel like I should share a few of my own personal stories the same way he did. I'm going to share some things at the end that's going to tie this all in together. What we want to do in the beginning, and I know half of you are going to hate little exercise that you do at conferences, half of you are going to love it, but it's our presentation and that's what we have to do. And this is what Scott did. So I want everybody to take your pointer finger and rotate yourself and just point at the wall. Just point as far as you can behind you. Perfect. All right. Now everybody stop. Now what I want you to do is visualize exactly where you pointed. I want you to put your finger back in front of you again. And I want you to now point a little bit further than you did before. Just a little bit. I see Jay's reaching, Brian's reaching, Lisa reached really good. Perfect. What that is, 80% of you can reach further than you did before. Congratulations, you are coachable. Congratulations, you have the capacity to be a leader. Congratulations, you want to constantly get better. 10% of you probably reached as far as you could possibly go right from the beginning. So congratulations, you are already reaching your limits right from the jump. And then there's the 10% of you that didn't do anything, and there's a special place in hell for you because you don't participate in our class. So, God bless you. All right, so once we're done with that, he kind of talks about different tools to overcome your mental blockers, ways to reach your limits, stopping yourself. One of my near and dear friends, one of my mentors, my friend Jeff Christiana, Jay's father, has the saying. He said it at Power Wednesday shoot probably 6 years ago, and he called it getting ready to get ready. It's, have you made your phone calls? No, I'm going to organize my desk. BS. You're just procrastinating because you're nervous. Joe Sullivan calls it the realtor's prayer. You make a few of your unsolicited phone calls, you knock on doors, and you just take a step back and you pray, please don't answer the phone. Please don't answer the phone because you're so afraid of rejection. Guess what? Sales is rejection. Get over it and overcome that. We're going to identify some true tactics. We're going to master human attitude. And the one thing you can control is how you react to outside forces. You can't control the outside forces. You can't control if there's a storm coming in. You can't control if you have a crazy, angry client whose father knows more about real estate than you do because they bought a house in 1964, right? These are things we can't control, but we can control how we react to them. So that's my photo right there. I kind of superimposed my head over somebody else. I'm getting good at this whole sharing and whatnot. And
hey, Ryan, that little body underneath could not hold that head.
No, the head is gigantic. And believe it or not, I actually took like 7 selfies with my face like that to get the right image.
Well done.
Clearing your head. And I want to make a distinction, right? The whole positive mindset, the whole negative mindset, there's times and places for that. I get it. But for you to constantly be positive is damn near impossible. For you to be negative is damn near impossible. Instead, let's have clarity of the situation. The same way that when you break your arm, the doctor isn't emotionally responsible for his actions, right? The doctor tells you exactly what you have to do to get better. He has a sense of clarity. He is seeing things just how they are, right? So when we go through this, there's going to be a trigger, right? It could be the angry client, it could be the angry father. There's the interpretation, right? How do we interpret what happened? There's our emotional response. Right there is where we have to pause before we react. All right. And what Scott talks about is this sense of reflection. We have to have that quick pause, that quick sense of reflection. I'm sure if you're anything like me, road rage is a commonality. I have it every single morning, but Recently, I stopped and I reflected, and I didn't chase people down on the road anymore. I decided, you know what? I'm just going to go about my business and do what I have to do. And that reflection happens right before your action or reaction. Right now, because of the global pandemic, people are making impulsive decisions. Don't make one you're going to regret. The best way I can explain this is every single night before I go to bed, I either read or go on Amazon. Pre-pandemic, I would go on Amazon and I would order things, and I would have 3 days later a biometric toothbrush. I would have a remote control hand sanitizer, things I don't need. But at that particular time, I thought they were super cool. I've wasted so much money. Now what I do is I put it in my shopping cart. If I still need it the next morning, I buy it. 99% of the time, I don't need that stuff. I don't need any of the things. I don't need a super fancy case with like rhinestones on my cell phone anymore. Just give me the basic one. What he talks about next is something super important to everybody in sales and everybody in general. Self-doubt is everywhere. He, during one of his presentations, left his cell phone and he said, text me all of your self-doubts. And he said that his phone was blowing up with people saying, I don't think I'm good enough in sales. I don't think my clients like me. I don't think my kids like me. I don't think I'm a great manager. Guess what? We all have self-doubt. We do. If I was to ask everyone right now, you would all text me the same thing. You would all text me your self-doubts. It is what it is. It's normal. But the key is to not let that fuel who you are. It's the elephant in the room. Everybody has it. Instead of focusing on your self-doubt, focus on what matters. Focus on the things that are important to growing your business. Focus on prospecting. Focus on farming. Focus on growing. Focus on reading. Focus on researching, etc., etc., etc. Because the old saying is what you pay attention to, guess what? It gets done. So if you spend all of your time self-loathing, oh, I'm not good enough, find a way to get better, right? It's super easy in this technology age to get better. Go on YouTube. I put a vanity in my mother's house the other day. Never put a vanity in, never done plumbing before. I went on YouTube, I figured it out, and I got it done. Fortunately, it's my little brother's apartment, so if it leaks, it's his problem. But still, hey, I got it done. My mom is happy. What we want to do is we want to focus on operational tasks versus growth tasks. The operational tasks are the paperwork. It's putting a listing in. That's great. You have to do it, but you shouldn't spend 3 hours of your day putting a listing in. You should become more efficient at putting a listing in. Find a new way of putting a listing in. Ask your admin, ask your manager, ask another agent in the office to help you. When you have downtime, do a few practice listings. So by the time it becomes, hey, I have to put this listing in, it'll take you 30 minutes. Best way of explaining it is the first time you write a real estate contract, it probably took you 2 hours. You're going through line by line by line by line. Now it'll take you 20 minutes. You know the key parts, the key points, you know everything you have to put in there. It is the same amount of information. It's the same document. Everything is the same. It's like when you want to dig a swimming pool. You could work super hard and dig that swimming pool with a spoon, or you could work super efficient and you can get a bulldozer and a backhoe to help you. The growth on the opposite end are the things that are going to grow your business. It's prospecting, it's business generation, it's canvassing, it's geofarming. It's all the things that are going to lead to future business. Activity is the necessity of productivity. Work on the business, not in the business. Just because you're in motion doesn't mean you're productive. That was one of my favorite ones. I know so many people that are so incredibly busy. They organized their desks 37 times this week, and their desk has never looked better. And guess what? They're going to organize their desk again tomorrow and the next day. But when I asked them, did you make any phone calls? Well, obviously with the the legislation. We can't do that yet, but did you send out any mailers? Did you do anything to grow your business? Oh, no, I was just getting my ducks in a row. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. I hate when people get their ducks in a row. How many ducks do you have? I have no idea. All you did was clean your desk. Keep in mind, and this is something that became so important to me as my son gets older and older. I blink my eyes, I snap my fingers. My son is now 10 years old. The only commodity we can't get back in time is life, or in life is time. All right. That is so important. We have all these tools. Think about Dot Loop, for instance. How incredibly efficient is that? Joanne Adamek, who's on this phone call, she's one of my favorite people. About a year ago, we sat down, we did a crash course on Dot Loop. She wanted to learn. She had to become more efficient. She just, with the help of Morgan, sent a contract over to her client today from the luxury of her own cubicle here at the office. How powerful is that? He goes on and he starts talking about time management. And time management is super, super important. What you can delegate to others or become more efficient at, right? We talked about that with Dot Loop. The pandemic, in a sense, helped us all out. We can now have, I was on Loretta, we were on how many Zoom calls? 37 yesterday, right? All from the luxury of our own office. We got to hear amazing speakers. We got to hear amazing content. Afterwards, I talked to a group of investors, all from the luxury of my own office instead of going from one location to another location. Focus on the energy that grows. Be aware where you're spending your energy. Do yourself a favor. Take a snapshot and figure out what your hourly wage is going to be. Take your total commission, boil it down to 40 hours a week. Are you spending your time well enough? These are questions you have to ask yourself. Ask your manager to help you out. Continue to push to do better. This is one of my favorite things. Get better every single day. Good enough is not good enough if it can be better. That was a quote from Dr. Rick Rigsby. A lot of the stuff that Scott was saying is stuff that is so incredibly important to me. And I fuel my day every single day by listening to Inky Johnson, Gary Vee, Dr. Rick Rigsby, these people that it's not just sunshine and rainbows, but it's that sense of clarity, right? Real estate is not just Power Wednesdays and rainbows, right? We have to, be more mindful of that. In a business, we can't sustain. Either we grow or we shrink. So I ask every single person on this call, are you growing? If not, how can we as a company help you grow? I refuse to let anybody in this office not grow, right? It's either you grow or you have a career redirection. Maybe real estate's not for you. That's fine. It doesn't mean you failed. If you take LeBron James and you tell him he failed because he's not a good golfer, that's ridiculous. If you take me, well, we're not going to talk about me. We'll leave it at LeBron. Change is inevitable. You have to live with it and you have to adapt to it. Think about the change that came over our lives in the last 12 months. Each and every one of us changed and adapted to change. Reminds me of a story of my very good friend, Joanne White, out in Saratoga. And I remember when this pandemic first happened, both her and I were trying to figure out how to use Zoom. And I remember clear as day, I was at my kitchen table, she was at her house, and we were kind of just playing around with Zoom, doing practice Zooms here and there. And this was before one of our sales meetings. Lisa Roth hopped on to help us out. And what we did was we understood that this was the change that was happening. We could have either said, you know what, this is BS. Joanne has forgotten more real estate than I know. I don't need to do this. What are you talking about? But she adapted to the change and she applied it. And yesterday she did one of the best presentations I've ever heard. She did our coffee and conversation where she's talking about with new buyers, which is absolutely fantastic. It's a way for us to have that content out there, but you have to be okay with the inevitability of change.
Fine, I'll slow it down.
What was that? Nope, not me. Okay. One of my favorite quotes from Gary Vee: you either evolve or you become extinct. That's it. There's no other way of doing it. We're either in an evolution or we're extinct. No one cares that it's always been done this way. Brian and I were at conference, I think last year in Nashville or 2 years ago in Nashville, and we heard this fantastic speech from a former NFL player, and he calls it the that syndrome. No one cares that you've always done it that way, or that's not going to work, or that this or that, right? Change, it's inevitable. Anticipate the disruptors and act on it before it fully happens. I again go back to last March. We were in the middle of a global pandemic. All of the real estate offices shut down. We knew we still had to engage the realtors that work for us, that work with us, that work within the community. So what we did was we started Power Fridays, which was a way to bring guest speakers in, a way to chat with guest speakers, a way to fully engage our audience. And I can't see the chat, so if Lisa or Bri, Jay, you want to monitor that, thank you. Now is where the fun begins. Anybody who knows me knows that I am a huge fan of Japanese culture. And it was just kind of awesome that Scott Greenberg brought this up during the presentation. I have a Buddha statue in my office. My ultimate goal is to go to Japan and to buy an authentic samurai sword. So that is one thing that's super, super important to me. So when he brought in this concept of Shoshin, it's essentially, and I'll read it to you from the dictionary, right? Shoshin is a word from Zen Buddhism meaning beginner's mind. It refers to having an attitude of openness, eagerness, and lack of preconceptions when studying an object, even when studying at an advanced level, just as a beginner would. That is so powerful. How many times have you ever had a conversation and there's a single family member who I won't bring up because this is being recorded, but they know more about anything than anybody else, and they refuse to learn something new? Do you all remember when you first got your real estate license, when you went on DOS and you saw that little line that said passed, how incredibly excited you were? And then you went into your little notebook and you wrote down every single thing that you wanted to do, every single thing that you wanted to accomplish. Your fire was burning so red hot, but through time, through BS, through terrible clients, through bad circumstances, that fire started to dim a little bit. It is time for each and every one of you to reignite that flame, to reignite that fire. And you want to act as if you're totally new to something all over again. When I was training jiu-jitsu, it was one of the greatest life lessons ever. I did jiu-jitsu for about 12 years full time, and now I just dabble with it. You can learn from everybody, whether it is the brand new kid that just walked in on the mats or the black belt that's been doing jiu-jitsu from Brazil for 40 years. There's every single person. I often ask for advice from agents that just started in real estate because they don't have any preconceived notions. They're going out there. They might be trying something brand new. Learn from everyone. Be willing to learn and be humble. Continue to sharpen the axe. That is from the book, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. He's talking about the same thing that old Japanese philosophers were talking about. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there's a few. Take a second to think about that. We all know the experts that refuse to learn something new. They might, be in a position of power. They might be your spouse. They might be your aunt, your uncle. They, every single time, and I talk about this, it's the father who bought a house in 1964, who's now telling his son or daughter that this house is way overpriced because they bought a house on Sears Roebuck. Let's just have that beginner's mind. Let's all move forward. The other philosophy he talks about is Kaizen, and I hope I'm doing it justice pronouncing it the right way. That's how he pronounced it. At least that's how I interpreted it, so that's what we're going to do. The Japanese term meaning change for the better or continuous improvement. Every single day, you should try to improve. Every single day, you should try to make things better. And I'm not talking about on day 1 to day 2 going completely vegan. I'm talking about from day 1 to day 32, you start having a salad and you start breaking those little habits, right? If anybody's a smoker, right, instead of having a pack of cigarettes a day, go a half. then go 3. I know it's hard, but small incremental changes are going to help you. Make small tweaks. Get an idea from everyone everywhere. He makes reference to 2 companies, Toyota and Canon. Toyota asks their employees for kind of updates, help. What can we do to make this more efficient? And they actually apply probably 90% of the stuff that they get from their employees. Canon, the film company, does a great thing where 30 minutes of every day, they give their employees an extended break, but during that break, they have to think of ways to better themselves. We should all do that. We should all wake up, go on with our day, put in your schedule 30 minutes of self-reflection, whether it's from 5 to 5:30, whether it's from 4 to whatever time works best for you. That is your own downtime. Listen to some Mozart. I love him. Actually, my favorite is Bach, but listen to classical music and just go. Big change is hard. Start with small stuff. Be consistent, right? Anybody who's listened to my first video with Inky Johnson, be patient and engage in consistent activity. I bring up 2 people, well, two thoughts, Kobe Bryant and a mobile university. Kobe Bryant, arguably one of the greatest NBA basketball players ever to live. He would, after every single practice, still continue to shoot in the gym. He would practice 2 or 3 more hours a day than anybody else. By the time the competition realized what he was doing, he was so far ahead of him that they couldn't catch up to him. Now I ask you, everybody's busy, right? So instead of trying to figure out where you're going to find 2 hours, we all commute somewhere, sometime, someday. Instead of listening to the same song over and over again, my Spotify mix is the same 14 songs, no new music is good. Turn your car into a mobile university. Listen to a podcast on the way to and from the grocery store. That 20 minutes here and there of content is going to pay dividends in the future. Find something that you really like. Start listening to Gary Vee podcast. Listen to Tom Ferry podcast. It doesn't have to be real estate. It could be anything in general. Something that's going to help sharpen your saw. He talks about elevating your clients, not just having a transaction, but building a relationship. When you show empathy, you elevate their emotional state and be human. I challenge all the managers on this call, elevate your agents. Have that same sense of empathy. We all are dealing with a crazy seller's market right now. We all have buyers that have lost out on 37 homes. We have to take a step back and show that empathy. One of my favorite things he talked about was working with gratitude. And it's not getting what you want, it's wanting what you got. Right now, somebody is wishing for the life that you have. Just think about that. There's a picture somewhere. I don't know where it is. It's like a cartoon photo. And it's a gentleman in a wheelchair looking at a guy in a bicycle saying, I wish I had his life. And that's a guy on a bike looking at somebody in a car saying, I wish I had his life. That's a guy in a car looking at somebody in a Lamborghini saying, I wish I had it. And it constantly goes up and up. And then it finally shows a little boy in a hospital looking out the window at all of them saying, I wish I had their life. All right. Perspective. That is the most important thing. Being grateful releases hormones that can cure depression. It's a scientific fact. It's who we are. It's who we're born into be. Being grateful even when the chips are down, super hard and super important. And rock bottom is a great foundation to build from. I'm going to share a personal story afterwards about my rock bottom and how that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. So 2 quick stories, and we are good on time. And I apologize if I'm talking fast. It's 2 things. 1, I wanted to get all the content in, and 2, I am super passionate about this, so I get excited and just talk really, really fast. So here's an old Chinese proverb. All right. One day a farmer's horse runs away, and his neighbor says, wow, that's a shame. Your horse ran away. What are you going to do? And he looks and he says, who knows if that's good or bad? 2 weeks later, the horse comes back with 10 other horses. The neighbor looks at him and says, wow, what great luck you have. That's fantastic. You now have 10 horses. And the original Chinese farmer says, who knows if that's good or bad? All of a sudden, 2 weeks later, the farmer's 10-year-old son or 20-year-old son goes to jump on one of the horses, and he ends up getting bucked off and breaking his back. the other farmer looks and goes, wow, that's terrible. I can't believe that happened to your son. And the original farmer says, who knows if that's good or bad? 2 weeks later, the army comes in and they start recruiting people for war. And they look and they round up all the 20-year-olds, but they can't recruit the farmer's son because he has a broken back. The other farmer says, wow, that's amazing. The original farmer says, who knows if that's good or bad? The point of that story is we don't know what's good or bad right when it happens. And I told you I'd share my story. As I said before, I did jujitsu fresh out of college. During college, I had a gym. That was the way that I made money. I owned a gym. I ran a fighting organization. Everything for me was about martial arts until one day I had a fluke accident and I ended up rupturing my ACL, my LCL, and my meniscus. So I was sitting there and I was at a crossroads. What do I do with my life? It was super painful for me because I couldn't do what I thought I was destined to do. I had my real estate license at the time, but just like anybody else who has 1 foot in and 1 foot out, I had no productivity. I did nothing. My passion was not there. It gave me a chance to reflect on what I was doing. And I remember sitting in my mom's house in her driveway crying because I had no money. Now, don't get me wrong. I always had a roof over my head, but I was 30 years old. I felt like a failure. Right. And my mom was like, don't worry, everything will get better. Everything will get better. I went home, laying in bed, and I got a random Twitter message from my friend, Dr. Brian McKenna, who asked me about real estate. I have never met this man in my life, and I'm wondering, why in the hell are you messaging me on Twitter? The next day, I hobbled into my crutches. I walked into the Berkshire Hathaway office, and I signed the paper that day. That, to me, was the most important crossroads of my life. And that's the whole thing. Who knows if it's good or bad when it happens? At that time, it was awful. Looking back, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I am forever grateful that it happened. Because if not, I would still be doing the same jiu-jitsu and I wouldn't be as happy as I am today working with all of you amazing folks. The beginning slide that I had a gray wolf and a black wolf. And I don't know if anybody ever heard this old Native American story. And I'm going to read it to you. And then we're going to end right on time. A Cherokee elder was teaching his young grandson about life. And he was saying, inside of you, you have a gray wolf and you have a black wolf. The gray wolf is evil, angry, envious, has sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority issues, false pride, and self-doubt, and a terrible ego. The gray wolf, on the other hand, has love, joy, peace, serenity, humility, kindness, happiness, a sense of empathy for all. And the young boy looks at his grandfather and says, Grandpa, if they're both fighting, which one wins? Grandfather paused and he said, whatever one you feed. I ask you all today to make sure you feed that positive energy, feed that gray wolf, use some of these things that we discussed today, and hopefully you can have a better sense of clarity moving forward with everything. With that being said, thank you all. And anybody have any questions? I'm more than happy.